Hello and welcome back to the Bytesized podcast. It's been a little bit. Took some time off in January to kind of deal with some housekeeping stuff. So like some personal news. I've started a new job. My new full-time job is at Product Hunt, which is really exciting. I've been a big fan of Product Hunt for a long time. So really excited to transition to actually working there. I also took some time off during January, basically to just kind of recuperate from a pretty crazy 2017. That also included, of course, taking a break from recording podcast episodes. But today I'm really excited to be back and to talk with my guest today. So my guest is Bair. He is the creator of a interesting product called Keto Chow, which is a full meal replacement, similar to things like Soylent, if you're familiar with that, but specifically designed to meet kind of the macro nutritional requirements of the ketogenic diet. So low carb, high fat. It's a really interesting product that I've been using for a couple weeks now, and I wanted to get him on the show because it's kind of an interesting product, especially for me, someone who comes from a software background, and he comes kind of from a technical background as well. To move into making physical products, I think is super interesting. So. I really enjoy this conversation. We talked, of course, about ketogenic diet. We also talked about nutrition, kind of his experiments that he's been doing recently with different kinds of fat sources and all kinds of interesting kind of nerdy nutritional stuff. So if you are interested in trying Keto Chow, Chris has actually put together a coupon for listeners of the show, which is awesome. You can use the code Bytesized5. So just go to the Keto Chow website, which is ketochow.xyz, and use the coupon code Bytesized5. You'll save $5 on your order. They have some really great kind of sample packs, which have a bunch of different flavors, which I've really enjoyed. And in particular, I like the cookies and cream flavor. So if you want a recommendation, I've ordered the big cookies and cream Keto Chow mix, which is great. So again, I really enjoyed this conversation, and especially for me with not much of a nutrition background, it was really interesting to hear from Chris and to kind of get a sense of what his thought process was going into creating Keto Chow. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you after the interview with some more info. Without further ado, here's Bair. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Yeah, it's going
awesome.
Okay.
So how would you describe kind of what you do to people? What's kind of your elevator pitch if people ask, what you're up to?
Well, I'm making a nutritionally complete meal replacement it's ketogenic, and so usually when people ask, what do you do? I used to just say I do computers, but I recently quit that job to do this full time. So what I usually tell people is that I am making a product that helps people lose weight and control diabetes.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's an interesting transition. Like most of the guests, I guess, on this podcast have like a technology background. I'm trying to remember how I first became familiar with your product. What kind of stuff were you doing before Keto Chow?
Well, wide variety of stuff. I used to do wedding videography. I've done web design, system administration. My most recent job was a Salesforce system administrator. So I've that's why I said I would just tell people I do computers.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about the like how you kind of got introduced to, maybe just to start with, to the ketogenic diet?
Well, so I was doing a You're familiar with Soylent, I'm assuming.
Yes. Well, can you explain maybe a little bit about
sure.
what that is?
So Soylent, well, it goes way back to Rob Reinhart, engineer, hated making food, decided he was going to make his own concoction. Ended up getting kind of sick because he forgot some stuff. Decided to do a Kickstarter campaign using the recipe that he made. It got delayed. I read an article about it on Ars Technica, which was hilarious, by the way. And because it kept on getting delayed, and I didn't want to drop I think it was $250 for a 4-week supply of it.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. And that was on a Kickstarter, and you just didn't know when you'd ever get it. And like I said, it kept getting delayed and delayed. So there was a pretty robust do-it-yourself community that had sprung up. And it was actually even endorsed by the company. It was hosted on their site. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to try doing this myself. I'm going to buy all the ingredients. And it was fairly expensive. It was, strangely enough, it was more to buy the ingredients than to buy 4 weeks of the official stuff. But
sure.
Then you can make it yourself. So I started on on a recipe called People Chow, which Soylent Green is people. Ha ha ha, the joke.
Okay, I get it.
And then the Chow part comes from Futurama. The guy who made the recipe was a big Futurama fan, and they have the Bachelor Chow product, or the fake product of it. Everything a bachelor needs, and it kind of goes along with that, the whole meal replacement thing.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. The main reason I started it was to lose weight. I lost about 12 pounds over like 3 months or something like that.
Nice.
Ended up gaining it all back over the 9 months I was doing it. So that was kind of a flop. But and I was actually at a tech conference in San Francisco. Came back. I was officially heavier than I was when I started the meal replacement stuff. And so I had heard about this ketogenic diet thing, but didn't really know much about it other than you had to have lots of fat and that they liked MCT oil.
Yeah.
So I found a recipe for a ketogenic version. I tried it. It was absolutely terrible. I switched to a slightly different one, and it was kind of okay. And
so, like, terrible in like taste or like efficacy, or what do you mean?
Well,
exactly?
It worked extremely well, but it was mostly coconut flour and ground chia seeds and raw cocoa powder, and I mean, it was absolutely.
It sounds very grainy.
Oh, it was so bad. It was like somebody took an Almond Joy and a full-on coconut and put it through the blender. I mean, it was. Anyway, I was supposed to do that one for a week. I ended up doing it for like 3 days, and just said, screw that. Anyway, but I had first been introduced to keto. If you go way back to 2008, one of my sons started having epileptic seizures. And after the 12th or 13th, my wife always corrects me, the 12th or 13th medicine that we tried, the neurologist said, well, if we can't find something that works, and we did right after that, he said, if we can't find something that works, we're going to have to put him on a ketogenic diet. And we were like, what? So he sent us home with a bunch of info, and I read through and I was like, you got to be kidding. It's like, how can this be healthy? They're living on fat and all that other stuff.
Right. The usual keto. Yeah. I'm very familiar with that as well.
So, yeah, that was my first introduction. We didn't do keto at the time because, like I said, we found a medicine that worked. But yeah, so I started doing these meal replacements that were ketogenic. And the guy who made the recipe that I first started off with, he didn't know really anything about keto. He had never done keto. Oh, okay. I didn't know that at the time. And when you do a ketogenic diet, there are a couple of things that you have to watch out for. And first,
real quick, I realized we didn't actually ever maybe explain what keto is. There's probably a lot of people that do know what it is because that's kind of the intersection of like tech and diet stuff. Can you maybe do like a quick explanation of what it is exactly?
So the 5-second version is it's Atkins with science.
That is a great description of it. I love that. Wow. Okay.
The longer version is when you restrict your body's intake of carbohydrates, your liver takes over, and any essential carbohydrates you need for things like your corneas and blood cells, your liver will make gluconeogenesis. It's great stuff, but you maintain a good level of protein so that you don't lose lean body mass, and then all of your other energy comes from fat. It can either be fat that you're eating, or it can be fat that you've stored, and it puts you into a state of fat burning, which some people use it for epilepsy or Alzheimer's treatment.
Right.
My main purpose in doing it was to lose weight, and I lost about 60 pounds that first year.
Wow.
So anyway, so that's keto in a nutshell. There's for your audience, people are going to want to go to Reddit/r/keto, Keto. That's really an awesome resource.
That is where I first went. I'm not sure how I was introduced to keto. I would guess that maybe it's. I mean, I'm sure it was Reddit in some form, but I think you might probably are familiar with the slow carb diet. Tim Ferriss's his thing that he kind of outlines in the 4-Hour Body. I think I was reading about that, and someone was like, "Well, if you want something even more effective, then there's keto." So yeah, the Reddit, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, the subreddit for keto. I mean, maybe something more popular. I would say that might be the definitive place for keto, like kind of discussion and stuff online.
Well, there is another website that one is by far the best. There are two software engineers, one's in Connecticut and one's in Australia, that run ketogenicforums.com.
Okay.
They're the two keto dudes. They have their own podcast.
Cool.
That's a really good source as well. But
awesome.
Yeah,
I'll check that out.
That's kind of the introduction to keto.
Yeah. Okay, so I realized I derailed you. So you're talking about the person who made the people chow? Is that what that was? They didn't know what keto was, or they
actually. So it was the recipe that I first started off with was called Keto Food, made by a guy who he dumped a bunch of recipes on the do-it-yourself site and then disappeared. No one's seen him in 7 or 8 years or something like that. Anyway, I guess 3 or 4. My math's wrong. Anyway, so he didn't know how to do a ketogenic diet, and his when you do a keto diet, you have to watch out for electrolyte imbalance, specifically not getting enough sodium.
Right.
And it's because in the absence of insulin in your system, your kidneys express more sodium, and that in turn takes out more potassium and more magnesium. And so if you get electrolyte imbalance, you end up with it's commonly referred to as the keto flu.
Yep. Yeah.
And when I first started, like I said, I hadn't really done much research. I just kind of jumped in with this recipe and assumed incorrectly, thank you very much, that it would have everything that I needed because, it's nutritionally complete, right?
Right.
So I was actually laying in bed with what I thought was the flu, and I pulled out my phone and I just Googled keto and then flu.
Oh man.
And
wow.
I was like, oh, that's a thing. And so I went downstairs, made myself some chicken broth, and I felt better in about 5 minutes. So nowadays I just eat a jar of pickles and drink the juice. So
nice. Yeah, I recall the first time my girlfriend and I both kind of jumped into keto with some knowledge, but not a ton. I mean, like the very cursory reading. And I remember pretty quickly, I think like maybe the second day I just felt awful. And so then, from then on, it was like chicken broth or like lots of Powerades and things like that, or putting like salt in your water, just a little tidbit of salt. So the keto food, that didn't have, the nutritional background, I guess. So was the second one was better, or how did that work for you?
Well, the second one still had the incomplete nutrition, but at that point I knew how to supplement. And then There is a guy named Ted Tyken who he started making a meal replacement. He sent me a sample of it, and I was like, "Whoa, that's actually good." I was plugging my nose and just kind of downing this stuff as fast as I could with a bunch of water. And so after I tried his, there was another guy named Ken Swanson who had another recipe that used as its base heavy cream.
Mm-hmm.
And that completely blew my mind. I was like, whoa, this can not only be good, this can be like, my kids will drink it good.
Heavy cream is the magic ingredient.
It sure is. So I went back, started playing around, took some of the ingredients I had for People Chow, and I came up with kind of my own recipe. And I was like, well, I like the chow. I'll just call it Keto Chow. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have criticized this, saying it sounds like dog food, but whatever.
Yeah.
But so, and when I did it, I made sure that, so my primary goal was to make sure I wouldn't ever get keto flu again. Right. And then also to make sure that it had no grit, because I was done with grit after the ground up chia seeds and all that stuff. So that was kind of the impetus for making Keto Chow. And since then, I've iterated on it a bunch of times, I've released a whole bunch of different revisions. The version of 1.5, that's the latest version that you can still make yourself. I actually have all the links to the Amazon products on my website for people.
Nice.
And the kind of the reason why I did it, I did it for me to make doing keto easy.
Sure.
Because you have to watch your vitamins and minerals and electrolytes and all that sort of stuff. But more than anything else, I wanted to make it so that it was easier for other people as well, that's why I released it for free with the recipe and everything like that. So, and it's kind of interesting how keto has started to gain a foothold in the tech world.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I just about a week ago got back from San Francisco. I went to a little conference that was put together by some guys who have a ketone ester drink that they've released.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so I was one of the vendors that was there because I not only have the recipe available for people to make themselves, but you can also I mix it up and you can buy it directly from me. But it was interesting because I guess in Silicon Valley, people they're really looking for any edge that they can get, and so fasting has become something really popular. Because as you fast, you actually enter a state of ketosis. And after it's about 2 or 3 days, you get into really deep ketosis. And those ketone bodies, they have a lot of, they're not just an energy molecule, but they're also a signaling molecule. And it tells your body to do a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And one of those is your brain, its preferred form of energy, more than glucose, more than anything else, is ketones. So if there are ketones in your blood, it'll uptake that, and that's where people get the clarity of mind. That's why people drink bulletproof coffee, for instance, because the MCT oil, it goes into their liver, gets converted to ketones, and they're like, "Whoa, it's like a drug that's legal."
Yeah. I'm familiar with that like really deep ketosis feeling. I would describe it almost as it's kind of like if you're like very caffeinated, it's kind of like a buzz that is just like, oh, this is nice. Like I'm very productive, like everything. Yeah, the clarity of mind, definitely.
And there are a couple of ways to get that. Like I said, you can fast, but most people don't have the intestinal fortitude, I guess, to fast for a couple of days at a time. You can take what are called exogenous ketones. They're lab-created ketones, either in the form of a powdered salt, or now there's the company that has the pure ketone ester.
Right.
Apparently it tastes like rocket fuel, they say. It's not very good, but
I've heard a lot about those, but I've never tried. Have you tried those before?
It's been 3 years since I started keto, and I have as yet never seen the need to take exogenous ketones. There's actually a lot of unknowns about them. There's just to really digress a bit in organic chemistry. with different molecules. You'll have different handedness. You have right hand and the left hand, and our bodies make one particular type. All of our enzymes know how to handle that one particular side. When you make it in a lab, you get both.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's one of those unknowns, and I really don't want to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because that was Microsoft's job way back in the day. But there are a lot of unknowns, and so I don't feel the need to do it. Just among other things, because they're really expensive.
They are super expensive. That's what actually stopped me before. I've heard a lot of positive things about them on like the usual suspects of like, I don't know if you listen to like the Tim Ferriss show or any of those, like those things where, have a lot of like very smart keto people on. There's a lot of people who are very into exogenous ketones, but they're just super expensive. And again, I didn't feel like I ever needed them either. So.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, they are super expensive. And the funny thing about it is your liver is more than capable of producing more than enough ketones. When you take exogenous ketones, you're looking at getting into, you can use a blood tester. They're actually designed for diabetics, but it'll tell you your ketone levels. And you're looking to get into the range of like 0.5 to 1.5 millimolars per deciliter. Right now, I tested my blood last night. I'm actually doing an experiment on myself where I'm only having keto chow, and all of the fat in it is coming from coconut oil, which is kind of fun. But anyway, as of last night, my blood ketones were at 4.8.
Wow.
Which is really high. And I would have to take probably about, I don't know, $80 or $90 worth of exogenous ketones to get up that high. And they would only last 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
And instead I'm doing it with like $2 or $3 worth of coconut oil plus the fat from my tummy. So sounds good.
What do you use for that blood testing? So I've seen, I think it's like the Precision. Is that maybe one of the brands that makes it, but they stopped like producing it or something? I am actually very interested in doing that. So I'm curious, just like selfishly, if you have any recommendations for that.
So the Precision Extra here in the United States, they assumed that the only people who were going to be buying ketone strips were the diabetics, and so they priced them really. It's insane. It's almost $5 a test strip.
Oh wow!
Yeah. There's also now you can use. They're called keto sticks. It's a urinalysis that checks for acetone in the urine. No, acetoacetate. It's one of those two. Anyway, the problem is, and I actually tell people who are first starting keto, go ahead and get the P strips, because it's useful to tell when you start producing ketones.
Right.
Because your body doesn't quite know what to do with them. Your cells aren't uptaking the ketones yet. And so a lot of it is going to come out in your urine. And it's a really good motivator. It's like, yeah, my pee stick is purple. And people are like, does that mean you're pregnant? It's like, no, it means I'm making ketones and it's cool. The problem is, as time goes on, that becomes less and less effective. Your body stops producing extra ketones and just makes the ones that it uses, and the ones that it produces, it uses. So
okay, interesting.
It's for entertainment purposes only. So you've got the Precision Extra that's really expensive. Now, a funny thing is, you can buy the strips in like Australia and ship them here, and it costs less than buying them here.
It's just in the US they increase the price. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Kind of a gray market. But the interesting thing is, the ketogenic diet has gained enough in popularity that there are now companies that are, well, there's one in particular called Keto Mojo. Their claim to fame is that their ketone strips cost $1.
Okay. Wow.
So
and that's when you say like a strip, like you can think of that as just like one blood test, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
One test. So, and they also have glucose strips. And actually, their meter is really cool. It's much better than the Precision Extra as far as what it does. And I've seen people compare the two side by side and get comparable results. But it's ketone test strips. They're cheap. They're glucose strips. Not only test your glucose, but also your hemoglobin and ferritin, I think it is. So how much iron is in your blood, which is really handy if, say, you're low on iron. It'll kind of tell you that. So that's actually the one that I personally use, just because it's cheaper. Now, there's the last way that you can check your ketones is there are breath meters. There's one called oh wow, just dang, what is it called? Anyway, yeah, there's one that's made in there's one that's made in Sweden. I actually have one of them. It works kind of okay, but it gives you false positive readings if you've been recently eating carbohydrates, which kind of defeats the purpose.
Oh, yeah, I suppose it does. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then there is one called Level, Level. Problem with that one is it's more designed for clinical applications. It's very, very accurate, but it costs like $300 for the. No, actually, it's more than that. It's like $700.
Oh, wow.
But you can test as often as you want, and it's the sort of thing that a doctor who was prescribing a ketogenic diet for his patients would have that in his office, and every time people come in, they would blow into the canister and they'd stick it in, and it would read their ketone levels. So
interesting. So the strips are still kind of the preferred, like kind of the right place between like price and performance kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm curious. I mean, a lot of people, and me particular, like I work on like software products, right? A lot of the people that have been on the show are dealing with like, websites or like mobile apps or stuff like that. What is I mean, like I've never really worked with like creating a physical product of any kind, and in particular, like you're working with not just a physical product, but it's like a food product. It's an ingredient product, and I guess I don't know the total like ingredient makeup of Keto Chow, but I imagine it's pretty like there's all kinds of stuff in there, right? So what is that experience like? And like you have a software background, so I imagine that transition was particularly interesting for you, right?
Yeah, well, the whole iteration thing and version numbers has really come in handy. Keeps things straight. But it was going to a physical product, and I didn't think I had a passion for this sort of thing. I was always into technology, but yeah, this is what I think about when I wake up in the morning now. So it's been really interesting to come up with. Well, among other things, I used to use off-the-shelf ingredients. The Keto Chow 1.5, that's the last one that you can, go and buy all the ingredients for. Going forward with that, it used to be that I was actually mixing this up a single batch at a time. And when I say batch, I'm talking about a single week worth.
Okay, yeah.
So if somebody, I just threw together a web order thing on my website. I had a blog that was going where I was documenting my entire experience, and WooCommerce was an excellent way to get the shopping cart going. So that's what I used. And yeah, I was just mixing them up one at a time, and it was really small batches, allowed me to change stuff really a lot because I was being very agile, because if I wanted to change something, it was like less than 2 or 3 days before I had the new ingredients from Amazon and I was changing it. Nowadays, I'm using a place that manufactures vitamin premixes.
Oh, interesting.
Because you want to get all of the nutrients that are required for a human to be healthy. Because the idea is that people can use this for one meal, or they can use it for 2 meals if they really want to, or they can use it for all 3 meals and get all of their calories and all of their nutrition from this. That way, if they decide, oh crap, I'm working on this project, I just can't stop going, or I have to run to the wherever. If they have to do 3 meals in a day, the next day they're not going to be low on iron or magnesium or selenium or anything like that. And so I had to make it nutritionally complete, and to get some of the more esoteric ingredients, well, you can either use a vitamin pill,
yeah,
which works for a while,
I mean, like an off the shelf vitamin that you would just like mix in there.
Yeah. And originally we were using the Costco Kirtland Signature Daily Multivitamin.
Awesome. Yeah, I have that literally in my pantry. That's awesome.
And at first we would just include a bag of 7 of them with each week order and say, just take these. And then we kept on forgetting to send those. And so we ended up using the Willet Blend, what's that called? The Blendtec blender. Would dump a half of a bottle and blend them up and then mix it in with the powder.
That's awesome. Wow.
And that worked. But mixing it up in my house, it wasn't sustainable. Plus, we were doing it under the auspices of the Utah cottage food industry laws. So it meant we had to do it in the kitchen and all that sort of stuff. So it just wasn't scaling. And frankly, I wanted my house back because it was taking over my house. It had taken over my kitchen, my dining area, along with 2 of the rooms on the main floor. And so it took me the better part of a year to find a contract manufacturer who was able to mix up the stuff for us. But then I also had to find all the ingredients and source those out. But and get packaging, and it's been really interesting going from a software and a systems, and that was my main thing, was systems engineering, but going from that to designing packaging and getting all the nutrition information, because I know, first off, this is my primary source of calories myself, and so I have to make absolutely sure that everything is in there that I say is in there, else I'm going to end up with a vitamin deficiency, and that's no good. So I guess they call it eating your own dog food.
Exactly.
But
yeah, I mean, in that way, it is similar to software, right? Because you are the test subject, and you're building something, whether that is something you're literally ingesting or something you're using on your phone. You're building something that works for you first. Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, in particular, the stuff around like, sourcing and like packaging and stuff like that is, there's not a great analog to that in like systems work or software work or anything. It's very unique. So, and I want to say real quick, like one thing I do appreciate is about Keto Chow. So like, My girlfriend and I have been kind of experimenting with it since I guess like December. I had seen it posted like a couple times in the keto subreddit, and then I kind of just happened upon. I think the Keto Chow has its own subreddit as well, right?
Yeah.
So
it does indeed.
Yeah. So I had seen it kind of mentioned, and I was just like, you know what, let's try it. So people always I think say the kind of the hardest part about keto, like no one debates whether it's effective or not, right? Like it's very effective, in particular for weight loss, but for, kind of like mental clarity and stuff like that, it works really well, but it's just really hard to do. I think that's the thing that people always will say is like, yeah, it works, but for a lot of people, it's just it's a non-starter. So, and obviously like moving to something like Keto Chow, it's, there's still the component of mixing it together, but it's really like, my girlfriend in particular, has really started using it a lot more and really enjoys it. And it's, it takes her like 3 or 4 minutes to put it together. It's not too hard, but, the thing that also I appreciate is that you, in kind of, I'm not sure if it's always been this way or the more recent versions, but you really make it easy to, I guess, to like get started or like you said, you can have it for 1 meal, you can have it for 2 meals. You have kind of these, I guess, different ratios. You can say like, add this much heavy cream if you wanted to have like this much, kind of calories as part of your total daily, calorie intake. I think, and I'm curious, like, if that's something that was kind of there from the beginning, because like for most of these meal replacement people, like the people who are doing that kind of stuff really want it to be like a 3 meal a day kind of thing, right? That's, I think, pretty common. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if most people are, it seems like most people are like that with the meal replacement stuff.
Well, so most meal replacements, if you check, most of them are, they'll say, it's like, only replace 1 meal a day. It's actually kind of funny.
Oh, okay.
And even Soylent, the originators of it, they say something about can replace any meal, but not all meals, or something like that.
Oh, I misunderstood that then. Interesting.
Yeah, I think they did that for legal purposes. They still design it to be nutritionally complete, but
I see. Okay.
it's way high in carbs, but whatever. But the whole thing about, so I don't include the fat along with the keto chow. And originally that was just kind of out of necessity. There was no way I was going to be able to ship people, heavy cream.
Yeah, that's kind of get gross. I mean, you'd have to like freeze or like keep it cold in some way, right?
Yeah, and I've looked into there is powdered heavy cream, but it turns out it's powdered sweet cream.
Yeah.
And it puts you up to around 30 grams of carbohydrates a day, which is pushing the line for a ketogenic diet. And I've looked into other ways of doing it, and I just keep coming back to, this isn't a bug. This is really a feature. The fact that I can have however many calories I want simply by virtue of how much fat I add.
It's a really interesting kind of that component of like hands-onness for the person making it. I thought was really interesting when I first got the actual package.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people criticize. They're like, "Well, why don't you include the fat? How can this be keto if it doesn't have fat in it?" It's like, well,
read the instructions.
How many calories a day do you need? 1,600. Well, great, because I need 2,000. So should I make it just for me? Because
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because everyone does definitely have different requirements. I mean, my girlfriend and I will have vastly different, requirements for in particular, like how much heavy cream versus like water ratio and stuff like that. Yeah, interesting.
And having that uncoupled is actually, I don't know if you've followed what I'm doing right now. Not having the fat included allows me to do some interesting experiments.
Yeah, do you want to? So I saw you tweet, I think, about it in the last day or two. Can you talk about the experiment that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so I'll try to sum it up really quick. Basically, I did an experiment a couple of months ago where I just ate keto chow for 4 weeks, and it was mainly to prove to people that I wouldn't die.
Yeah, and so you're saying like three meals a day, or like 2 meals a day, or how is that?
3 meals a day with no other calories from any source whatsoever. Wow. So. And no other nutrients, I should say, from any source whatsoever. So part of the keto chow thing is it doesn't include omega-3s because those are kind of hard to get other than by fish pills. So I was having 3 meals of keto chow plus the fish pills that I recommend and water.
That's it.
And that was it. I wasn't having any sugar-free gum. I wasn't having any diet soda. I wasn't having anything else that had any nutrients in it whatsoever. And turns out I didn't die.
Clearly. Yeah. That's an impressive amount of discipline. As someone who loves food a lot, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I love bacon so much. How can you do that?
Well, it would have been a lot easier if I could have chewed gum, but I was restricting myself to not do that as well because a lot of people say you can't have sucralose, which keto chow has sucralose in it because it's the best tasting artificial sweetener. And I wanted to prove to them that, no, it's just fine. Just get over it, okay? So I did that test, and I got a really weird result. One of the weeks I was again in San Francisco for a tech conference, and my ketones were getting up to 5.5 because I was using just avocado oil instead of heavy cream. But also I had a spike in my triglycerides. And so I wanted to nail down what that was and see how different fats affect blood markers. And so the test that I'm doing right now, and I don't think there's any other way that I could do it with anything else but keto chow, is I'm having the same calories every day. I'm actually hitting almost exactly 2,000. It's within 10 calories plus or minus. And the first week I used heavy cream for my fat source just to kind of do a washout period. And then I did heavy cream again. And every Friday at the end of each of the weeks, I'm getting an extensive array of blood tests done to check and see how my insulin is reacting, how my HDL, my LDL, all of that different stuff is reacting to these different types of fats. And I did heavy cream first because that's primarily a saturated fat, the thing that everybody says is bad for you. It's going to kill you because saturated fat raises cholesterol. Well, guess what? It doesn't just raise cholesterol, it raises your HDL cholesterol, and it tends to lower triglycerides as well, which is really where it's at. But I don't really want to have a 3-hour discussion, so I'll leave it at that. But anyway, so then I did the heavy cream again, once again, with it's almost entirely saturated fat with a little monounsaturated fat, and then almost no polyunsaturated. And I don't know if and many of your listeners know the difference between them. I know I sure didn't.
I don't, so I'm interested. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll give the really quick one summary. There's a book called Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz. Okay. She was the one who wrote the article that kind of blew the lid off of the whole trans fat thing.
Right.
And that's why everybody agrees now that trans fat is bad. Well, that book was supposed to be a book of the article about trans fats. And when she started writing it, she's like, whoa, there's a much bigger story here than just trans fats. Anyway, I'd recommend reading that if you want to know the nitty gritty. But the basic gist of it is fats are chains of carbon that are bound together in a single link with hydrogen sticking off each one. Kind of looks like a centipede. If you have a spot where there's a double bond in the carbon, so it's missing 2 of the hydrogen atoms, and instead the carbon is linked to the carbon atoms are linked to themselves once, that's a monounsaturated. Now, monounsaturated, saturated fats are very, very stable. They do not oxidize almost for anything. That's why your great grandma had a bucket of lard on the counter for months. And it never went bad because it just doesn't. It doesn't oxidize. You don't need to refrigerate it. You don't need to do anything to it. Monounsaturated, they kind of oxidize a bit, but not much. And monounsaturated is things like olive oil and avocado oil. Now, then you have polyunsaturated, and those are where there's not just one double bond, there's several. There can be 3 or 6 or more of these double bonds. And those tend to oxidize very easily. And you generally see these in seed oils, things like canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil. Anyway, those are the polyunsaturated. And way back when we didn't used to think the saturated fat was bad for you. We didn't used to think the fat was bad for you. We used to think that sugar was bad for you, but then this guy named Ansel Keys came along, but I won't go into that. He convinced the world that we needed to lower our cholesterol, and polyunsaturated fats have this really cool trick where they lower your total cholesterol. They also lower your high density cholesterol, your HDL, which that's bad to lower that, but whatever. And so, but the American Heart Association, all those guys, they've been recommending polyunsaturated fatty acids for years, just on the simple basis that it lowers cholesterol. It doesn't change your all-cause mortality. It actually increases your chance of dying, but we won't get into that. But so my third week, I wanted to have some fun. So I replaced all of the fat. I replaced the heavy cream in my keto chow with grapeseed oil, which that's the highest polyunsaturated fatty acid I could find. It's higher than soybean. It's higher than any of the other ones.
Oh, and sorry, when you say higher, you mean literally the count of these, or like, I don't know, would you call it like the length?
Yeah, the percent.
Percentage. Okay. Yeah.
Of polyunsaturated. It has almost no saturated and almost no monounsaturated. It's like the epitome of what the American Heart Association recommends.
The mortal enemy.
And yeah. Well, the funny thing is, polyunsaturated fats also cause inflammation, which is what causes coronary heart disease, but I'm not going to get into that. But it was kind of interesting to do that week. I had plantar fasciitis, which is a inflammation in the tendon on the bottom of my foot, before I started keto. And that went away when I started keto, along with any other inflammatory problems I had. That came back during that week. It took the better part of the next week to for that to go away again. So it started first just throbbing, and then it started to hurt. And I didn't get to the point where I had to put the stretchy boot back on, but it came back. I did lower my cholesterol that week, but my other biomarkers did not show an improvement. So the following week, I went back on heavy cream, which was nice.
And then that went away, like the throbbing and all that stuff went away quickly. Interesting.
Yeah, it went away and everything was fine because I was, eating saturated fat again. Then I went on macadamia nut oil. I just finished that up. And that macadamia nut oil has the highest amount of mono unsaturated fat that I could find. And monounsaturated fat, usually most people agree is pretty good for you. I don't think it's quite as good as saturated fat, but it's a really close second. The problem with and I went with macadamia nut oil just because it's really high in mono. Avocado oil, I actually recommend to people to use heavy cream and or avocado oil in their keto chow, just because avocado oil has a really good fatty acid profile. It doesn't have a flavor to it, and especially if you have problems with lactose or dairy, it's just a drop kick. Plus, it has no carbs in it. So if you use that for keto chow, you're getting like 2 grams of carbs a day. It's fantastic.
Well, I was going to say, so that I'm very personally interested in that because I actually have had so much heavy cream over the course of doing keto that I'm kind of tired of the flavor. Like I'm kind of just over it. So I'm very interested to try something else.
Well, and my wife really likes the chocolate keto chow with the avocado oil. It's kind of interesting. So I personally prefer to do about half of the calories from avocado and half from heavy cream, but that's just me. So matter of taste, but it's not included, so you can do whatever you want. Anyway, so I did the week of macadamia nut oil, and I actually have not gotten the blood test results from that back yet. I get those back tomorrow, so that'll be really interesting to see. This week, starting Friday, the last Friday, I'm doing coconut oil, liquid coconut oil, which has a lot of medium chain triglycerides, the MCT that people like to put in their bulletproof coffee. That did wreak a bit of havoc with my digestive system, but I think I'm doing okay now. And next week, this is actually the really fun part. Most people say that a calorie is a calorie, and the only way to lose weight is to eat fewer calories than you burn, or burn more calories than you eat. Either way, I think that's a load of crap. I think it's not calories in minus calories out equals calories saved. Everything that I've seen says that it's calories in minus calories that your body saves by virtue of hormones such as insulin, which is the master regulator in all this, equals calories that you are allowed to burn. So if insulin is keeping you from accessing calories because you're eating too much sugar, you're going to feel slow and sluggish, and you're not going to want to walk upstairs, and you're just not going to have any fun. And it's a very fine difference in which one is the minus and which one is the equals. But so this week, this next coming week, I'm actually going to be replacing almost all of the fat in my keto chow with carbs. Now,
dun, dun, dun.
I originally was going to do it with, exactly. I was originally going to do it with dextrose, but just for kicks and giggles this morning, I mixed up the 191 grams of dextrose. And dextrose, just so you know, is the right-handed version of glucose. It's just another name for glucose in a powdered form. And 191 grams of powdered glucose is really, really a lot of glucose. It actually was enough that it won't fully dissolve inside of my blender bottle full of keto stuff. So I was just testing it out to see if it would work. And so I'm actually going to I have a friend named Dave Feldman. And if you're not familiar with him, I would recommend looking him up. He's a software developer. He's doing the whole citizen scientist thing, and it's really interesting. I honestly expect him in the next couple of years to receive a Nobel Prize for the work that he has done in biochemistry, specifically in the research area of lipids, because he is changing things like you wouldn't believe, because so many people are very entrenched in their understanding of how cholesterol and fats and everything like that works, and he's approaching it from a systems perspective. And it's not just him. There's an amazing amount of engineers, specifically software developers, but also like engineers who are coming into this and just saying, you know what? I think it doesn't actually work that way. That doesn't make any sense. Why would nature design a system that way? That's stupid. So let's look at how this actually works. And anyway, he I think he's right now is just finishing up an experiment he's doing himself.
I should get him on the show, it sounds like.
Yeah, you should. He is, oh man.
Yeah.
Dave Feldman's
you should
awesome.
Connect us. I would love to chat more about this stuff with him.
I absolutely will. But he's doing an experiment where he replaced part of his calories with Skittles.
Okay. That's not what I expected, I have to be honest with you.
And he's doing keto as well. No. And I was looking into that this morning because I don't think I actually tasted a sip of this 191 grams of dextrose, and just to see what it tasted like, and holy cow, I've never tasted anything that sweet in my life. It could be that it's been 3 years since I've had sugar, but also it was really, really wow. So I think I'm going to eat a couple bags of Skittles per meal.
That's well, I mean, I remember, so I've done a bad job of eating keto recently, but just over the holidays, I just always seem to fall off the wagon, as they say. But there is definitely an element of like when you've been doing keto for a long time and you taste something sweet, like on average things are so sweet, right? You're like, holy shit, like this is what things taste like normally, like it's just random, sugary things around. Yeah.
Well, and the end result of all this is I'm still keeping it isocaloric. It's going to be the same 2,000 calories for the entire 6 weeks that I'm doing this test. But I'm going to be having sugar that last week. And I'm down almost 20 pounds. It's 19 pounds as of a couple days ago. Since I started, I expect to gain at least 10 of those back during that week that I'm doing sugar. But a calorie is a calorie, right? Right. So,
and the ultimate kind of goal of the experiment is to kind of find the most effective in terms of like what kind of fat you're using with keto chow, or what are you kind of?
Yeah. Okay. So I figured I'd put I figured I'd put the two experiments together just because I'd already be in the thing, because I want to see what type of fat is the best as far as biomarkers go, because I don't think anyone's been able to isolate out fat quite as effectively as I'm doing with this experiment.
Yeah,
so
that's really clever, because I mean, we were talking about earlier that the way that you can kind of mix in not only just your like what kind of caloric requirement you have, but what kind of fat you want. I think that's a very interesting vehicle to do experiments with. I think that'll be really interesting to see the results of. Yeah. So I know we're pretty much there on time. I'm curious, what kind of stuff do you have planned? Like Keto Chow is a product, right? So, what is in kind of the future of Keto Chow, or do you have any kind of things planned that you're excited about?
Well, I'm in the final stages of getting version 2.1 spooled up and ready to go. So that I'm going to be changing around the protein for milk protein instead of whey protein. It should digest slower, so it'll make people feel full longer. It also adds more phosphorus and calcium. I'm changing around some of the other ingredients, specifically selenium, and I'm coming out with 10 new flavors.
Very exciting. Yeah. So and I'm curious. So you do the kind of this versioning system very, very systems software kind of implementation of that. Do you have a, I guess like we would call that normally like a change log or something like that, some kind of version log? Is that somewhere on the website? I'd be curious to kind of go back and explore that.
I do. I have a change log, and goes all the way back to version 0.9.
I love that. That's exciting. Yeah, you'll have to link that to me. I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
Well, hey, this has been really cool. I was really excited to get you on because I've been using Keto Chow as like a customer, but I was sure that there was all kinds of interesting stories in the kind of in the background or in the like the maker side of it. Yeah, it's been really interesting. Anything, I guess, obviously you want to plug Keto Chow, or is there anything else you want to kind of plug here at the end?
I guess the only thing I could say is it's ketochow.xyz. And the reason for that is there was a domain squatter that tried to shake me down for the .com.
No, that sucks.
And I told him no. And funny enough, he actually tried to get my competitors to buy it out from underneath me, and they all told him where to go and what to do. So yeah, it's .xyz. You can find me on the Facebook, the Twitters, and the Instagrams at Keto Chow.
Awesome.
KETOCHOW. But yeah,
cool. I'm looking forward to version 2.1. Awesome. Well, hey, Chris, I appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
My thanks again to Chris for being on the show. It was really cool to hear about the motivations behind Keto Chow and kind of what drove him to create the product. Like I said, I've been using it personally. We've been using it in the household, and it's been really interesting. It's a really cool, really unique product that has a lot of motivations and like kind of creative inspiration in software and systems design, which I think is a really interesting way to approach this kind of problem. So again, if you would like to try Keto Chow, Chris has made a coupon available for us. For listeners of the show, you can use Bytesized 5. You'll save $5 on your order of Keto Chow. Like I said at the beginning of the show, they have a really great, in particular, like a sample pack that includes a lot of the different flavors. So just like a single serving size of many of his most popular flavors. And like Chris said at the end of the show, it sounds like there's new flavors coming out soon. So that's really exciting. I'm a real, genuine fan of the product, and it was really cool to have him on the show. So again, this podcast has been kind of on a break in January as I was kind of doing some real life, some IRL in real life stuff. But I'm happy to be back recording episodes. The plan is basically to have a every other week release. So this episode is coming out on Wednesday. What day is it today? Wednesday the 7th. And there'll be another episode out, I guess, on the 21st of February. So look forward to that. If you enjoyed the show, of course, a review on iTunes is especially appreciated. As far as I understand it, this is how iTunes and how our Apple podcast overlords decide to recommend a show to new listeners. So if you enjoyed it, please go and do that. It really means a lot. If you want to follow the show and stay kind of up to date with what's going on, you can follow the show on Twitter. It's at Bytesized Pod. You can also follow Chris, our guest for today, on Twitter. It's just at Keto Chow. And finally, if you want to follow me personally, it's at I'm KMF on Twitter. All of those are great places to keep in touch with new episodes of the show, what I'm up to, and also what Chris is up to. So again, thanks for listening, and we will catch you again on February 21st with our next episode. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoyed it.